Politicians are elected to represent us. They are here to protect our interests over their political interests. Refusal to try to work toward compromise is putting politics over people. Now, President Trump has been at the White House virtually every day, working and waiting, and trying to make a deal, bending, compromising, and offering solutions. They not only disrespect him, they sometimes don't even show up. They've refused his every overture, put a stake in the ground, proving that politics are more important than putting people back to work. And as 800,000 federal employees face the loss of a second paycheck this Tuesday, the Democrats disregard their distress by not negotiating to end the partial government shutdown. And that, my friends, is a problem. But it's even bigger. They refuse to negotiate for people who live paycheck to paycheck. They don't consider Americans whose lives, safety, economy, and social service agencies are drained by these uninvited illegals. Today, the president offered yet another compromise to reopen the government. There will be no concrete wall, only steel slat barriers, $5.7 billion for it, $805 million for drug detection technology, $800 million for humanitarian assistance, almost 3,000 additional Border Patrol agents, 75 new immigration judges, and a 3-year extension for TPS and DACA. The president described in clear and direct language the human crises, ranging from 300 of our children dying every week from heroin, 90% of which comes through those porous Mexican borders. Now young people can seek asylum in their country without traveling with those dangerous human traffickers and coyotes. He talked about what many of us in law enforcement already knew, that parents give their daughters birth control pills, knowing full well that their daughters will be raped along this dangerous journey. And the knee-jerk reactions are in. Nancy Pelosi calls the president's proposals unacceptable and said, what's original in his proposal is not good, and what's good in his proposal is not original. Chuck Schumer called it one-sided and ineffective. No surprise. Democrats, demon rats, are dug into the theater of lies and hate, casting Donald Trump as evil while casting themselves as angels, supported by a mainstream media intent on publishing any anti-Trump story, however baseless or absurd. Journalistic standards be damned. The theater was actually brought to the absurd when Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to the president saying it was too dangerous for him to give the State of the Union speech, saying she didn't want him telling his lies and distortions in the House. A typical example, by the way, of what the left is doing in general. Shut down the voice of the president. Shut down law and order. Shut down security at our border. Turns out, Nancy, you never even spoke to security. In fact, every day Congress is in session, nobody's been shut down for lack of security. Admit it. You made it up to shut them down. But never in the history of this great nation has a speaker refused the president the opportunity to give a State of the Union address. And of course, not one to be cowed. The president pulls you off a government bus 30 minutes before your trip to Europe. Nancy, what the hell were you doing boarding a bus with your Democrat cronies on the way to Brussels to meet with NATO leaders? There's a partial government shutdown. We don't need you in Brussels. How do you negotiate your way out of a stalemate while you're on a 7-day European excursion that we, the taxpayers, pay for? You got some chutzpah, lady. And what were you going to do? Have another few parties on our dime and badmouth the president to those who prefer that we foot their NATO bill too? And then you and your band of friendlies off then to Afghanistan to find out what's going on from the troops on the ground. Really? You think some soldier is going to saunter up and whisper in your ear to give you the real scoop when his bosses at the Pentagon would be happy to do so in Washington? Or is it that you think the troops are dying to see you? Send them a video, Nancy, and thank them. And by the way, is this how you reinforce your power base? By approving trips? Are you the premier congressional junket organizer? But then again, you've never been one to sacrifice. How are you? How about instead of the trips, you escrow that money for federal employees? What's that? You'd rather not? Because polling blames Trump for the shutdown, and you're good with that. And by the way, Nancy, so is he. He's wearing his big boy pants, and he offered to take the burden just to get it done. How about, since you're in charge of all spending bills, Nancy, you forego your check until this is over? Man up like the federal employees going through the shutdown. Donate congressional salaries to those who won't get one. After all, reports are you and your husband are worth over $100 million. How'd you make that money, Nancy? How long is it that you've been in Congress? Now, President Trump, he isn't taking a check. He's donated his salary since day one to a number of federal agencies. And Nancy, this is just the two of us here talking. Admit it. You're big donors in California. They want illegals to pick grapes. Even Cesar Chavez, you're old enough to remember him, fought tooth and nail to stop illegal immigrants, to protect legal immigrants and the farm workers. It's all theater, folks. The president, they say, is a fearmonger. This is a manufactured crisis. Say that to the face of an angel mom whose child was murdered or massacred by illegal immigrants. You have kids, Nancy? You do, don't you? And why did you approve securing the border like so many of your Democrat cronies in 2006 and 13 under the Secure Fence Act, but not this? The obvious answer, because Donald Trump wants it. Instead, your path is to disrespect Americans and instead respect those who violate our laws, while you and your ilk raise pictures of furloughed federal employees when you won't meet with the angel moms who come to your office with pictures of American children killed by illegals. So let me see if I understand this. An American mother shows a picture of a child murdered by an illegal. And Chuck Schumer and his gang, they come out and show pictures of federal employees. Is there a moral equivalency here? Are you folks schizo? Are you working for Americans or illegals? Or is it that you just don't give a damn? You vacation in Hawaii. Your buddies vacation with lobbyists in Puerto Rico during the shutdown. And you plan a jaunt to Europe while federal employees are trying to save every dollar to buy groceries. Admit it, you don't give a damn. Nancy, you're a hypocrite, a political operative. Your mantra, destroy the President of the United States. To hell with the tax-paying, hard-working Americans. Let them eat cake. I've got a junket to go on, an ego to assuage, and an electorate to ignore. And Nancy, if you're too afraid to take a commercial flight, there are alternate ways to fly. Check this one out. It's tailor-made for you. Joining me now with the latest on all the breaking news, White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Good evening, Hogan.
Hey, Judge. Great to be with you.
All right. You had quite a week this week, didn't you?
Absolutely. It's nonstop at that White House.
Well, look, I want to talk about BuzzFeed in a minute, but I want to talk about, first, the reaction of the Democrats, not after the president laid out what he said this afternoon at about 4 o'clock, but what they said before he even spoke. Talk about that.
It's incredible. They did it when he gave the Oval Office address, where they had a canned speech when they didn't know what he was going to say. They did it again today, releasing information, denying the plan the president put out. They refused to work with him. They said the plan was bad when they hadn't even heard what he was going to say. So many people thought he was going to declare a national emergency,
right,
which he didn't do. So the point is, Democrats are hypocritical here, and they're disingenuous. They're not being truthful with the American people. They're against a president before they know what he's even going to say, and it tells you everything you need to know.
You know, I have to tell you, Hogan, I have in front of me, you know, the facts from the 2006 Secure Fence Act, the people who supported it, the Democrats voting yay, and the 2013 border security. It is stunning to me that they have the nerve to go out. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do it, to go out and say this is immoral, a wall is immoral, when 6 years ago it wasn't immoral and 13 years ago it wasn't immoral. It is so transparent.
Right. They said it was a manufactured crisis as well. Well, Barack Obama called it a crisis, a humanitarian one at that, from the Rose Garden. Was it manufactured then? Was it manufactured when they cast votes to protect our border? And like you said in the open, is it manufactured to those who've lost loved ones at the hands of illegal immigrants? Ask them that, and they would say it is not manufactured. We face a humanitarian crisis along our border and a national security crisis along our border. This president recognizes that, and he's trying to do something about it. When you give the Democrats the data and explain what's going on, it's like they don't believe it. They sure don't know it, and worse, it's like they don't care. And that's where we are right now. The president has tried repeatedly to come to the table to fix this, and Democrats are nowhere to be found.
They believe it, Hogan, and they know it. But as I said, their politics are above serving the people. Right. Their politics are above making sure that a federal employee doesn't have to go out and get a loan to pay the rent or the mortgage. It's about them and destroying that man on the screen right now. And it is infuriating. But
well,
yeah,
no, but you make the point. They pretend to care about these federal workers who are living paycheck to paycheck, saying to the American people, listen, these federal workers are in such bad shape. They've got to sell their own clothing to make ends meet. But the only clothing they appear to care about is resort casual, which was the attire recommendation for their jaunt down to Puerto Rico. I mean, first they go to Hawaii, then the Democrats party in Puerto Rico, and then, as you mentioned, Nancy Pelosi wanted a trip, a 6-day excursion to Europe, which would have ensured these 800,000 employees for the federal government lose their second paycheck in a row. That is unacceptable. The president asked her to postpone that trip, refused to let her use military air to try and keep her in this country so we could have a conversation to reopen the government and secure the border, and she still refuses to come to the table.
Well, you know, and I want to get to BuzzFeed, but the theater of all of this with the president. I mean, think about negotiations. I mean, I took labor law in law school. You know, you got management, and then you've got the unions. Okay, here we've got management. We've got the president. There's no one at the table, but he's still bending. He's still compromising. Let's go to BuzzFeed. The hate for this man is unbelievable. When BuzzFeed is willing to come out, and every Democrat this side of Hawaii is willing to come out and say impeach, impeach, when they publish a story that has no foundation, and when the special counsel comes out and says, hey, look, you know, there's no truth to this, the president never told Cohen to lie, then, I mean, can't the American people see through this?
I think they are starting to. The president has been saying fake news for a long time, and that was a perfect example of it. But it wasn't just the BuzzFeed story. It's that every other mainstream outlet carried it from sun up till sundown. I got calls at 5 o'clock in the morning asking me to comment on it. And the fact is, BuzzFeed itself ran a story, I should say, with no corroborating evidence whatsoever. Even the author of the piece, who has a history of political activism, came out and said he couldn't corroborate the piece either. They ran it anyway, and every other outlet picked it up. And not to mention the fact the subject was Michael Cohen, someone who is an admitted liar and a convicted felon who defrauded this government of millions of dollars. It's insane to see what the media are doing just to try and take away any wins from Donald Trump and to hurt his reputation. And now we know this past year, polling shows 90% of the coverage against this president is negative. I wonder how much of it's fake. I bet it's close to that number.
Can you imagine if only like 60% was negative?
It was 80. If it was 80%, think how high he'd be in the polls. It's unbelievable what they try to do to this man. Who all he's done is left a lucrative business to come into this White House and do everything he can to make our lives better across this country. He's done that regardless of demographic. Wages are up. Unemployment is down. We have better trade deals. America is doing outstanding, and it's because of Donald Trump.
All right, Hogan Gidley, get some sleep. Had a rough
Thanks so
week.
much.
Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.